It is a first down. Pirates.
You can paint this one purple. What an incredible win by the ECU Pirates.
Welcome into Blackbeard's Alley, a Pirate football podcast. East Carolina victorious last Thursday night against the Tulsa Golden Hurricane Pirates. 41, Tulsa 27. In East Carolina, it was fairly similar to that Army game where East Carolina got off to an excellent start and really had the offense clicking early. Finished the game with right around 565 yards or so, throwing for 300, running for 265 plus. And right now we'll take a look back at it and also take a look ahead because, again, this will be, or there will be another, 11 or 12 days before ECU will return to action on November 1st up at the Lincoln Financial Field against Temple in what will be a 2 o'clock game. We found that out earlier today, today being Monday, October 20th. But right now I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Jason Tyndall. Jason, how are you?
Doing good, Bubba. Like I said before, it's always great to jump on here and put the show on for everybody after we have a Pirate victory. There were some bumps and bruises along the way, but overall, it was a fairly dominating performance, although at times as fans, when you're sitting there, you don't realize what the difference is from a statistical category. And I have to hit on a point you just made. We probably have the best lineup or best setup this year for our open dates that we've had in a long time. Because if you remember, we've always been we felt like we're slighted by the conference, how our schedule would wind up with open dates. And this year it's wound up being ideal based on the health of our team and the time to get re-energized and refocused on Temple to go up and play in front of what I call a graveyard, because you could probably yell at each other across the Lincoln Financial Field and hear each other from one side of the stadium to the other, because there'll be about 15 fans there and about 2,000 Pirate fans total.
Yeah, you never have much of an atmosphere there at Lincoln Financial Field, and that was even when the Owls were very good under Matt Rule and other regimes, but it's just one of those things. I mean, especially when you get there in the Northeast, outside of Penn State, you don't have an abundance of good college football atmospheres. It's more of an NFL or pro sports, large cities. But as we take a look at this game, I mentioned the fast start for the Pirates. Defensively, when we came out, you knew you were going to face a very creative offensive mind in Trey Lamb with Tulsa. Even though they had struggled, you knew they had some capability there. The Pirates came out, got a couple stops early, and then the offense was clicking. Unfortunately, you just had to settle for a field goal on that initial drive. But then a couple drives later, after you'd shot yourself in the foot a bit, where you thought you had a third down completion to move the chains, and then you had a receiver run backwards and lose a yard, end up having to punt the football. But then that next drive, you have a touchdown. And one of the common themes there early on, in addition to having the ground attack going, Anthony Smith, the Pirates were throwing it early and often, and Anthony finished the night 4 catches for 150 yards and those 2 really big explosion plays for the touchdowns.
Absolutely, Bubba. And this offense is predicated on being able to stretch the field vertically, and we were able to do that against Tulsa. It looked to me like they put their shutdown corner over on Yannick, which created a night for him that probably wasn't ideal individually. But when you outgain a team 199 yards in a game and a win at home, I feel like things are clicking offensively. And like you said, there's 568 yards for ECU and 398 for Tulsa. So I back it up right about 100 and 80 yards difference between us and their success they were having offensively. And most of theirs came from the tight end on the seams and the verticals up between the two high safeties. So that's something we can clean up, just little adjustments by Coach Alders and team. But overall, I never felt threatened by Tulsa. I actually was more concerned in the second half against Army than I was against Tulsa. And, hats off to Coach Lamb, knowing his family for so long. And he, like you said, he has a very creative offense and does a good job. And I feel like if Tulsa gives him a chance to stick around and put into play what his strategy and his plan is going to be for the long-term vision of the Golden Hurricanes, it's going to create tougher outs for all of us moving forward. I just hope he gets that kind of leash because he's a good person and he's a damn good football coach.
Tulsa's first touchdown came on a very creative play, tight end pop pass. They aligned Brady Foley, the Indiana transfer. We had talked about him with Bruce Howard and the season he had to date and some of the plays that he had made, and the Indiana staff, when they had spoken with Trey Lamb, they were stunned that the Golden Hurricane was throwing them the football the way they were, much less the significant contributions. But the young man did it once again, 6 catches for 126 yards, and he had that 38-yarder on the pop pass where he was aligned. I think it was maybe in the B gap to one side and on the play fake while Baylor Hayes was play faking to the running back. Foley went into the B gap on the other side and down the seam and was wide open for that 38-yard score.
Yeah, and for old-time footballers who've played and coached, you'll realize most of the time a pop pass comes from that C or D gap alignment by a tight end traditionally. Old school Iowa or triple option football over the years, wishbone option with the pop pass to the tight end or the Y position. And teams have become very creative of what I call sifting in receivers through A and B gaps now off of the run action plays and passing opportunities. So get hats off to them. It's something probably we weren't prepared for. It looked like it on live and in person. Haven't gone back and watched the game again. But it's what that does is it gives us a chance to have a teachable moment, a coachable moment. So when other teams are trying to be creative of sifting players through those internal gaps off the run action pass, we actually are more familiar with that scheme and can do a better job of stopping it. But, hats off. I mean, the guy had a great night, and they told us, the play-by-play guy told us from Tulsa that how surprised Signetti was that we're throwing to him. But he, tell you what, dang good tight end.
No doubt, 6'6", 260 pounds. I was impressed with Baylor Hayes, the youngster at quarterback. He finished the night 23 of 41, 251 yards. He was a little erratic early, missing on some short throws that I know he would have liked to have had back. Coming from a quarterback's perspective, just ones that he had to be shaking his head, where he just screens and so forth, where he made errant throws. But he bounced back. He had 2 really nice deep balls that he put on the money, and they were dropped.
Yeah. There's a lot of chatter going on right now about ECU, about how lucky we are. And I think at times we forget how unlucky we've been in the past. So I'll take luck over getting jobbed like we did at Tulsa. How many years ago was it now, in the early Mike Houston years?
That was 2020, the infamous Tulsa screw job, where you had 3 or 4 plays in a row, and then you had unbiased people like Scott Van Pelt and Stanford Steve that were just shaking their heads saying, like, man, East Carolina can't catch a break.
Yeah, I'm surprised that my neighbors didn't move that night when that game was taken. I think it was a Friday night. It wasn't. I'll just say
it seems like it was.
Yeah, my vocabulary was probably unfit for anybody under the age of 18 years old. So it's just good now to get these wins and have a little bit of luck, and feels like it's part of Coach Harrell's culture we always bounce back from a performance we're not exactly happy about. We continue to battle. We continue to play with a tremendous amount of effort, and it showed up in this game on Thursday night. And you know what? It was a home game for us. It wasn't really a great atmosphere, and we still put this team away as a conference team on the road. I know they had to travel here, but just wasn't a whole lot of atmosphere on overall in Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium. So I'm glad we did get a win. I didn't care if it was 41-40, as long as we won and could get to the next game, which is now Temple, which is the most important game on the schedule.
Speaking of bouncing back, that was one of the common themes throughout the night. In the second quarter, especially, I guess late first, early second quarter, you really saw the game turn into a back-and-forth affair. ECU was up 10-0. Tulsa had that pop pass that we referenced to Foley that made it 10-7. Then the first play of the second quarter, Marlon Gunn scored down in the Murphy Center end of the stadium to make it 17-7. And then the Golden Hurricane came right back, made it 17-14, and then we respond once again to make it 24-14. So I think that was the deep ball going toward the Murphy Center to Anthony Smith, where Caton really put it on the money, and we'll dive into that in a moment as far as the night that Caton Hauser had. But I was very pleased with the way the team responded. That's a trait, as we always hear, of good football teams bouncing back when the other team scores.
Yeah, absolutely. And that 63-yard pass to Anthony there in the second quarter, I feel like was where we started putting the nails into the coffin a little bit on them. I know the game was still close, but when you have two splash plays like that, just big, impactful plays in the passing game, it winds up opening up the run game. And so that obviously showed its value as the game went on. But it was just a good night for Anthony. I'm glad to see he and Caton are starting to get back on rhythm together. They've been talking about that, and I know that means a lot to them. But to win a game the way we did, where the other team also didn't turn the football over, neither team had a turnover, to win 41-27, throw out the opponent's name. Typically you win a game like that or even a higher score when there's a lot of turnovers on one side of the scoreboard. So it's just nice for neither team to turn the ball over, and we still put them away. And it's a lot more of a dangerous game than probably the casual fan realizes with Tulsa coming in.
Certainly. And the Golden Hurricane was very fortunate with some fumbles. They put it on the ground 4 times and got every single one of them back. And a couple of them, I think maybe it was even the first one, the ball bounced back up the field, at least 5 yards or 10 yards. And me and the folks I was sitting with, I said, "You got to be kidding me. How fortunate can you get?" And it's just one of those things.
Yeah. Football's shaped weird. It bounces weird. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
But I mentioned Caton Hauser, him throwing the deep ball very well. He had been underthrowing those deep balls pretty much for the majority of the season. That had been a common theme, but he was pretty on point last Thursday night. Finished 21 out of 38, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and also did some nice things, at least 1 or 2, if not more, read plays, and then did a nice job, as he so often does, of keeping his eyes down the field and moving within the pocket when a rush did come, and stepping up and making something happen. He finished tonight 7 carries for 22 yards.
And I don't know if everybody knows, but their defense has the leader in our conference for sacks and interceptions. And we took care of the football, and that goes back to the general, Caton Hauser. From the naked eye in the stands, it looked to me like his footwork was better on those deep balls, like he was pushing through the throw as opposed to, I call it sailing away, where their weight's not transferred.
Right.
He looked smooth. He looked confident. And I've got to think that leading up to this game, they spent quite a bit of time on those deep seam routes for the fades.
Yep. in addition to the 2 completions to Anthony, also had, I think it's a 35-yarder to Brock Spalding in the first half down the seam.
Yeah.
And speaking of being able to transfer his weight better and step into those throws, pass protection was pretty good on the night. Did not allow a sack. Meanwhile, we sacked Baylor Hayes 5 times and really harassed the youngster.
Yeah, the big boys up front wanted to eat. I got to say that Preston Carr's post-game presser it made my weekend. I just put it that way. I love that guy. And that's the kind of attitude we need and kind of personalities we need on defense. You need, a bunch of characters. Sometimes if you don't have enough characters on defense, you really don't have a defense, just to be clear. But we, getting after the quarterback, getting 5 sacks in a game. When's the last time we did that against anybody? Maybe Campbell, maybe Gardner-Webb a couple of years ago, but we haven't been able to get to quarterback at that tight front. And to see that happen, you got to give credit to the D-line and the edge guys for the rush. You got to give credit to the underneath folks, the linebackers and stuff with the crossing routes. And then you've got to give credit to the DBs, being able to provide that opportunity and the timing for us to get to the quarterback. But that's, the DB position is a little bit of a concern right now with injuries. But if we can get to the quarterback, we can play some, complementary football on defense and help slow the other offenses down.
To your point about 5 sacks in a game, heck, I remember, I think it was Coach Moe's second year in 2017. We only had something like 9 or 10 sacks the entire season. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's amazing. Bubba,
I tried to forget it.
Hey, you had to bring it up. There's a couple of names we don't mention on here, and that's one of them. I'll give you a hall pass on this one. You're not going to in-school suspension tomorrow. You get to still go to first period, but yeah, you're right. It was anemic at times, and 5 sacks for us is a lot. I mean, just our defensive set in our front, the way we play our front, it's hard for the three interior guys to get a sack. It's just their angles just aren't going to work, but it can help shut down the run game, which then opens up a lot of other things we can do creative defensively to create those havoc plays that Coach Harrell's always talked about, but also Coach Aldridge is carrying that forward, maybe even better. I got to think those 2 guys together with Tesh and the rest of the coaching staff with defense is really paying off, considering the concern that so many people had about our defense going into the season. I remember going to the NC State game and said, if we can keep them under 35 or 34, we've got a chance to win this game.
Right.
Really keep them under what we did. So I mean, I was one of the cautious critics of not getting a few guys up front in the transfer portal, and now I'm glad we didn't, because we got the right dudes already here. We didn't need to go out and bring a bunch of guys in who didn't understand the culture of the locker room.
A pleasant surprise has been local product transferring back home from Towson, and that is Ryan Roseborough. He had 1.5 of those 5 sacks.
Yeah, the guy was a running back at 300 pounds in high school. I know it was
playing
exactly
8-man football, right?
8-man football. So playing in space is like Kurt Warner, man, for the Iowa Barnstormers before he became the superstar for the Rams. But all seriousness, I believe having him come back, his athleticism, he's got seems like he has a nice burst off the snap. His first step is quick. But let's just call it like it is. Pay Rory Tesh what he deserves to stay here. I'm sure he's going to probably stay. It sounds like his family's entrenched in Greenville now. But he has done a hell of a job. And I've been watching him since the first year Coach Houston was here in pregame, when I'd go up in the Murphy Center or go down had times to go down to the field during pregame. His motor, his energy, the respect you can tell the players have from him is just something that's not typical in today's world with NIL and everything. And he just gets every ounce of energy and effort out of that group. I never questioned a defensive front. Never. So I'm just glad he's on our side and coaching with
Yeah, Roy Tesh brings that same mode to the interviews he does, be it at Media Day, Pirate Radio, or otherwise. Definitely, in my opinion, an underrated interview.
Oh man, what a great guy! I love it. I love going to. Everybody else is down there. I watched the punters because I told you about the Australian guy that we have on our team now that has a killing ball. I go down to the D line, and it's like going to a Motley Crue concert in 1985, baby. It's just awesome.
We mentioned how the Pirates had a 300-yard passer against Tulsa, with Katenhauser throwing for exactly 300 yards. Anthony Smith, 4 receptions for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns with those 2 really big plays, one of which went for 63 yards. And then you had the other one that was going toward the boneyard on the Pirates' first touchdown of the game. And then you also had a 100-yard rusher in the first 100-yard rusher of the season. What a night for London Montgomery, finishing with 125 yards on 16 carries. One of those went for 51 yards. I thought that was a pretty natural segue a moment ago when you said something about a burst. I was thinking about London Montgomery, and man, what a run there! 51 yards toward the Murphy Center early in the third quarter.
Yeah, there's running backs who are running third gear, and there's running backs who can get to fifth gear really quick by shifting from first to fifth. And I believe TJ and London had that gear. And then you've got the Steady Eddie with Marlon in there, and then hopefully Parker from the University of Houston transfer can continue to get better and hit the holes correctly and things like that, and provide great pass protection for us. But I still feel good about our running back room, even though I had some injuries and things like that had happened. And if you look at third down efficiency for the game, I mean, we had 27 first downs, but we were 50% on third down. So we were really good in the money downs, and running the football like that just changes the dynamic of the game for the other team and makes them start having to scramble a little bit because that clock is running and the time is getting shorter and shorter, and just continue to lean on that team and give. I will say before my rant ends here, let's not forget the big guys up front. They've taken some criticisms from Heat early on in the year, but even with the injuries to Bryce Weaver, and we lost the center at the beginning of the year, the guy from Houston as well.
Yeah, Carson Jones.
Yes, yeah, and he was going to be – I felt like he was going to just solidify that interior group of the guard, center guard. And we've had to play a lot of different folks up front. And, with Panda Askew and having, like I said, Bryce Weaver out, we're creating that depth. And if we can get healthy this week and get healthier and get our feet back underneath us and stay positive, we've got a chance to have a special season. And people, we all need to realize that from Pirate Nation's perspective. But the offensive line is, outside of the first quarter against NC State, and then that, we just didn't. There's a couple of games we just didn't weren't really getting off the ball well. I think that's starting to go away now. I feel like that we've started to turn that corner a little bit for us. Tulane the first half was tough, but that's not always an offensive line. Sometimes some other dynamics make the offensive line look worse than they really are.
No doubt. I agree. We've definitely seen the progression of the ground game. And in addition to London, 16 carries for 125 yards, you had Marlon Gunn continue to play well, 14 attempts for 60 yards. And then TJ Engelman, once again, getting 10 carries for 40 yards.
Yeah, we're starting to average for the year, getting closer to that 4.5 yards per those top 3 running backs, which is good. That means we can move the chains, run the football, and we can switch it up on you. But we also, everybody who's been watching this offense for 2 years, almost now 2 seasons, if the vertical game is even a threat, that opens up that running game and backs those deep half players off, so they can't just come down here and fill the alleys and fit gaps on the running game.
A lot of folks have talked about the length of Thursday night's game, and there were an awful lot of replays in addition to those 3 and 4 minute television timeouts. But how about this? You had 174 snaps, 91 for ECU, 83 for Tulsa.
Yeah, that was a long game. I don't know outside of the replays and going back and just the booth reviews. I've kind of enjoyed. I watched a few ACC games and they have the live commentary between the people who are in the ACC office talking to their officials, and it's interesting to see the dynamics of. So throw out East Carolina for a second. If you get a chance to watch one of those games, just pay attention to that, because the dialogue going back and forth, I believe, is really good for the casual fan to understand what's happening. Trying to get the play right, but sometimes it feels like it just drags the game on, almost like Major League Baseball was for a while.
Speaking of things being discussed at length, how about when I think they said, at least on TV, they said it was Jackson Barker that blew up the kicker for Tulsa. But whoever it was blowing up that kicker from Tulsa there on the onside kick, and that was one of those things that as soon as I saw it, I was like, I knew it was going to be a flag just because it was a kicker. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, what do you expect him to do? I mean, his job is to take care of him and not allow him to recover that. The guy signed up to play football. Next time, I bet you he keeps his eyes up.
Yeah, when my last year coaching, we had a player who wound up playing for the Boston Red Sox, and a team, I won't say where it is and who it was, but they kicked it. There was one of our crosstown rivals, and they kicked a 33-yard field goal to go up by 1 with about 7 seconds left in the game. And this individual, who's a pitcher for the Red Sox, he didn't do what he was asked to do on the kickoff return. It's because that kicker ran down our sidelines shooting guns at our team. When he kicked the ball off, this individual for our team went full head of steam. He was 6'4", about 215 pounds, and blew that kicker up. I'm talking about jaw pads coming out of his helmet. And I knew right then I had my starting linebacker for next year. I'll just leave it at that. He was like, if you're going to point at us, you're going to pay the piper. And, kickers, they do need to be protected a little bit because it is a little bit different, dynamic. But
right.
You still got a chin strap on like everybody else. And a lot of times those kickers are pretty damn athletic. So it's like, hey, just keep your eyes up and pay attention. Once you kick it, your eyes should come up anyhow. Once the ball's in flight, you don't want to whiff on the ball. But, be an athlete. Get out of the way. Because they make tackles at times on runs that are broken. So why not just go ahead and, as we call it, Barker him up, Jackson Barker? Is he the one that lit him up, Bubba?
That's what they said on TV. I'm not 100% on that.
He's a walk-on from Fuquay. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah. Whether it was Jackson or someone else, when he did, he stood there for a moment because he knew. I mean, he knew how hard he hit the guy, and he's almost like he just froze, and almost like he was going to help him up. He just stood there. It was so you can imagine some of the comments and so forth on social media, pretty comical. Certainly don't want to see anyone get hurt. I wasn't saying it like that. Not that I know you didn't take it that way, but just any of our listeners. But at the same time, if you're playing football, like you said, you have to, as they say, keep your head on a swivel, keep your eyes up, and expect that. I can definitely tell you, I don't think he'll make that mistake again. But the Pirates, a moment ago, Jason, you talked about how well we've done all season long, really, converting third downs. We were something like 53 or 54% going into that Tulane game, and we were 50+% down in New Orleans, and we were 9 for 18, exactly 50% against Tulsa. That has to rank in the top 10 or 15 nationally.
Yeah, you would think so. I haven't been paying attention to the national stats and stuff because I'm more focused on the American Conference. But I'm going to go back and take a look at that tonight to see where we sit. And I'm also wondering where we sit in turnovers and sacks allowed as well. That was our bugaboo last year. And that's what's frustrating, because that was the main component of the recipe we saw last year, right? With Garcia, we were a turnover machine. Caton comes in, he takes care of the football a little bit better. Still a few bumps and bruises for him along the way. And we're saying, hey, if we didn't turn the ball over, even at 30% of the clip that we did, we probably win the App State game or a couple other games that we just let get away. So the frustrating part is we're not really turning the ball over. It's just sometimes we're not converting down inside the 35 well enough. I feel like that's starting to become more of a rhythm problem than anything else. I think we're solving that problem. Just the offense is getting clicking. And also the opponent's a little bit different, but Tulsa defensively is not that bad. We just played pretty daggone good and, didn't shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, a lot of the things that you wanted to see improvement. We talked about Caton throwing the deep ball better and us simply taking more deep shots, and we saw that. We wanted to see continued progress in the ground game. We saw that. And then you wanted to see more involvement with the tight end. You had 6 receptions, 4 for Desirio Riles, 2 for J.C. Connor for right at 60 yards worth of production. And then something we have not addressed yet, the way we saw Mike Wright utilized, and I know it was 4 touches for something like 15 yards. So, no, you didn't have the big plays that you would like to see in there. But at the same time, the creativity and the way we used him, that's more of what I thought we'd see all along.
Yeah, again, outstanding young man. But I believe Coach Baker and the offensive staff realizes they've got to start doing some things that are a little unique as the year continues to mature and progress, to take advantage of anybody we have in the skill positions that can create one of those splash or burst plays, or plays that are game changers, where a long run or a reverse pass or a quarterback put both quarterbacks in there, and then you run the RPO and then give it and then let them throw it. Something that keeps the defense a little bit on their heels, and have them just realize that when Wright comes in there, something's going to be different. But overall, all that stuff works because the vertical passing game's working so well last Thursday night. Speaking of which, I'm glad it's our last Thursday night game. We were talking about that earlier, Bubba, but good gracious. Yep. The conference needs to do us a favor. I love Tim Panetti. I think he's a wonderful commissioner, but don't torture us and make us look worse than we should look on TV because you do overextend us on Thursday night. And I don't know if this is true, but they said the superintendent of Pitt County Schools had a mandatory parent-teacher night or something like that every teacher had to be at. Dude, whoever you are, pick your parent-teacher nights on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, or after the football schedule has been released, because the importance of ECU football on the economy of Greenville and Eastern North Carolina cannot be understated. And when you do something like that and don't have the ability to pivot and make an executive decision and make a change to move it back one more night with all those teachers, you already got enough problems on Thursday nights with JV football and soccer and things like that in the area, which is fine. The parents should go, but we're all hurting ourselves at the same time. We need to get out of our own selves way and just be humans and work together and communicate and make a better decision, period.
Yeah, that's one of those things, even if the individual does not care necessarily about sports, but, at least be in tune enough, or somebody, as they say, there's a podcast that I'm aware of and based out of Oxford, Mississippi. It's called Hen Raised Guys. And at least have a hen raised guy or gal for that matter to say, hey, this may not be the best idea.
Yeah, I mean, when you can get an Airbnb the day of the game in Greenville, that's, first of all, there's not that many Airbnbs. And number 2, that's what happened to us. We got an Airbnb the day of the game. That's crazy. That means the attendance is low. And the side we sit on, you're looking across under the trade, what's it called now? Walter Williams Trade Club still?
Right.
It was barren land. It's just empty. That should not happen. And it's because we were saturated with these Thursday night games, and that doesn't put a good look because our cameras are all facing that side anyhow. So on TV, my buddies are texting me from home going, what the heck's up with your Pirates? What's wrong?
Yeah.
I'm like, we don't live in a metropolitan area where there's, like if you draw a circle around NCS Moo or UNC Cheat, there's tons of alumni right here in this concentrated area. They can drive over there in 15 minutes. That's not the case in Greenville. There's only so many in Greenville, and the rest of us have to drive into town. And you're just, I don't know. I could go all night about it. I feel like Steve Logan right now just bitching and complaining about something, but it is what it is. I mean, there's anybody who wants to argue, call me. I'll argue with you. That was stupid.
Right. A lot of people that I know from my part of the state, I'm 30 minutes north of Charlotte, and unfortunately, they're not going to make that trip like I did last Thursday. Most of the time, I'll catch 4 or 5 hours sleep there in Raleigh with a friend, and if I'm not taking Friday off, I felt great when I got back to Raleigh, so I just drove it straight through. Got home about 3 a.m. Probably not my smartest move, but I knew if I went to sleep that I probably wouldn't wake up.
Yeah, we did that when I was living in Charlotte myself. We did that one of the Temple Thursday night games in Dowdy, Ficklin.
Yeah,
we drove. We were going to stop in Apex and stay with my parents, and we just kept on going. Just because it's like, hey, we got momentum. Let's just go. And it creates a bad Friday for us. I mean, it's just, come on. And it's no excuse. We should have more fans that show up. But even I'm like, hey, I'm so glad it's an open weekend and we can be adults and get things done around the house or whatever you need to do. Take your kids to T-ball, whatever it might be.
Yeah. We don't want to beat a dead horse here, but since we're on the topic of attendance, thoughts. It's been a trend in the second half, whether you were down 10 going into the second half against BYU or even these games, like the Campbell game, you kind of understand it. It's such a blowout, but these other ones, it's been very frustrating to see the student section as well as just some of the Pirate Club fans and non-student fans just vacate the stadium so early.
Yeah, somebody else was talking about this. We'll say we win the tailgate, and it seems like it's more about the party than it is about the game. And over the weekend, we were watching a lot of college football, and it's apples and oranges. But when most of those big games, when you cut them on, or schools, no matter where they're at, those stadiums are packed, and they're there, and they're participating, and they're engaged, and they're cheering, and it's the energy, and granted, we're not an SEC team, but look at Vandy. Now they've won some big games, and everybody say, well, winning cures everything. Well, there's some years when we're winning that, still some barren desert at times on Thursday night games, et cetera. So I don't know if it's a chicken and an egg or what, but it's so frustrating to me because we're supposed to be pretty much the premier fan base in the conference. Let's just call it like it is. And I don't think we act that way anymore. And I'm not pointing a finger at anybody else. I'm pointing a finger at myself as well, because there's been times that we go out at halftime and don't get into the third quarter just because we're socializing and talking. There's 8 minutes left in the third quarter before we get back to our seats. So it's, I take my own responsibility for that as well. We got to do better. We've actually had that conversation with our group in the last couple of weeks, like, hey, we've got to be better in this.
Kind of my final thought about the Tulsa game before we very quickly look ahead and go over what transpired in the American last weekend. I talked about how well the Pirates answered, and some folks, perhaps we talked about it, honestly cannot recall, but how we had not won a close game. And on one hand, that's a good thing because we had taken care of our business very well against Campbell and Coastal Carolina and Army. But you had a 31-24 score there a few plays into the fourth quarter the other night, and then we did what we needed to do to score those 10 points and put the game away.
Yeah, the sign of a football team is really starting to gel and come together. And I feel like we've got a chance to have a really good season, and for all of our Pirate fans. And compared to a lot of other seasons, we allowed something like these close games, not put them away or not win them. So I just think it's a good team. I think that it goes back to culture, everything that Coach Harrell and those guys do, and he keeps things so positive about the real stuff. And there's also the people who say, well, we don't get to hear the coordinators and stuff like that. Well, you know what? Those coordinators aren't paid to do press conferences. They're paid to win football games and make sure we're as good as we can be on offense, as good as we can be on defense, and as good as we can be on special teams, special forces. So, but I think Coach Harrell's doing a good job running this program, and I think it's a signature of his personality, his approach, and his enthusiasm, his energy, and his ability to understand that players need to have energy. And the only way to have energy is not to beat them up on Monday through Friday. Run this program in a way that's different maybe in the past. I'll just leave it at that.
I agree regarding those coordinator interviews. If you think back to preseason camp, we did have those. It'll be interesting to see if we have that moving forward, where you have some access on the front end, but then it changes when the season arrives. But hey, whatever we need to do, I can definitely see the pros and cons to each. But taking a look at what happened in the American, you had number 19 South Florida. They went to Boca and won 48-13. Then you had UAB. What a game there. They had, of course, parted ways with Trent Dilfer, firing former NFL quarterback, but 31-24 over number 22 Memphis. And just an unbelievable story there with the son of Chris Mortensen, Alex Mortensen, and what he did with the Blazers. And for the longest time during that game, I hadn't looked at the stats and so forth, and I didn't realize that Jalen Kitna was out.
No, I didn't either, but somebody mentioned that on IGO's board that the quarterback from Memphis is hurt. Is he out for the year? Not that I wish that on him, but I'd like to play him without him.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but Kitna from the Florida transfer that was there at UAB, or is there at UAB, but they went with the kid.
Isn't the Memphis quarterback hurt?
I'm honestly not sure about that.
I'll check on that. All right,
but no problem. Tulane 24-17 over Army. That was a game 3-3 at halftime, 10-10 after three quarters, 17-10 Army in the final 2 minutes, and then Tulane ties it up. And then I'm sure you saw the highlight of that game-winning score, just unbelievable. A tip drill there toward the, I guess, what about inside the 5-yard line, and hey, credit the Tulane receiver, even though it was fortunate. He did a great job of keeping his focus and making the catch.
Yeah, it was definitely pulling for Army like everybody else in Pirate Nation. I'm sure who was paying attention to that game, and I was watching a lot of it, and I was pulling so hard for them. And the piece that really irks me is the fact that we had this perfect setup on the Hail Mary down in Tulane just the week before, and an effort play by one of our players calls us not to catch it. Not a bad play. An effort play. That guy was trying to do everything he can to get to that football if it was tipped, and it wound up biting us in the butt. But I was pulling for Army big time, because that would have really helped our story and our calls moving forward.
The Pirates, of course, return to action on November 1st up in Philly at Lincoln Financial Field against the Temple Owls. Temple 49, Charlotte 14. It was 7-7 after a quarter, but then Temple scored 21 in the second and 21 in the third to blow the thing wide open. It was 49-7 after three quarters, and they cruised to that victory. And then lastly, this one surprised me. Not so much that North Texas won, but if you'd have told me that North Texas was going to go to the Alamo Dome and beat the Roadrunners 55-17, I wouldn't believe it. Coming back off that 63-35 loss at home to South Florida, that was very, very impressive.
Yeah, good football team, good football coach. And anytime a school has Texas in their name, there's obviously a fertile recruiting ground and the ability to raise money. So just leave it at that. I'm surprised they beat UTSA the way they did too, because it's hard to play in that dome. It's hard to play them at home because they seem to be really good at home and really not, really average on the road.
As I mentioned in the open, we're recording this on Monday, October 20th. So you still have another week and a half, a little more than that, before the Pirates travel to Philly. But with that being the case, what are your thoughts? On you had a 5-game September, 2 games in the month of October, and now you're bracing for a pretty grueling November with 5 games, and you're going to be playing your first non-night game. This game will be at 2:00 on ESPN Plus on November 1st. And this will be the Pirates' first Saturday game since way back on September 20th against BYU. But the positive is you have the chance to heal up, and the Pirates are pretty beat up in certain spots.
Yeah, there's a couple of points there, Bubba. Number one is I imagine the football staff is working on anything they can to start getting the players used to a game day routine that's backed up a lot compared to what they're used to this year, especially players who are new to our program. Because the last thing you want is to have that become a factor, and it should not, but we're still talking about college kids, and we're still talking about habits that have been created. The fact this is our first afternoon game is a little bit odd, so especially this deep in the season. But back to something I mentioned earlier, I don't believe we could have had a better slate of open weeks than we were provided this year by the conference. So I'm really grateful for that. Have a chance for a lot of these guys to get healed up and get rested and get back to the fundamentals, the little things become the big things, right? And we need to get back to fundamental football and get ready to go play in front of a cavern. So it's going to be empty. That's never fun for either team, but damn if 10 Point used to it, because that's the way it is every game almost up there, even when they were good. So it's like, can we go create our own juice and our own atmosphere? I'm kind of wish I was driving up there for the game, but I'm gonna take that one off and watch it on TV. So for the Pirate fans that are going, bravo to you and thank you for attending that game, because I know it's not easy for a lot of us to get to.
Yeah, guys like Bryce Weaver, Xavier McIver, Brock Spalding, Desirio Riles, Rashid Reason are among those that are a bit injured. And, of course, this time of the season you're going to have those sorts of things. But here's hoping that a lot of those guys can be on the field on November 1st up in Philly. But that will do it for this edition of the show. We'll have our Temple preview next week. We'll be talking with Ryan Wallen of Al's Daily. That's Temple 24/7 sports site, their equivalent of Hoist the Colors. Ryan does an excellent job, so we'll have a 20 to 30-minute chat with him, previewing that matchup between the Pirates and Als. Also, other content headed your way, whether it's between now and then, or prior to that November 8th game, the homecoming game against Charlotte. We'll be catching up with Hall of Famer Dick Carrata. I had the chance to visit with him prior to last Thursday night's game against Tulsa. He has a new book, I Am a Pirate. Definitely encourage folks to check it out. I know he was able to sell several copies that night. Many former Pirate players, both from his era and more recent eras, were there getting some pictures and a book by the great Pirate Dick Carrata. And then you have Dwayne Harris and Shane Carden, 2 of the 3 football players being inducted this year. They've agreed to come on Blackbeard's Alley sometime in the next couple weeks. So we'll have those conversations, and then hopefully we'll try to get Justin Hardy, the other football inductee in the 2025 class, on as well. Be sure to follow us on social media on Instagram, as you see there on the screen, at Blackbeard's Alley, at Blackbeard Alley on X, and then subscribe to our YouTube channel. Or if you'd like to go back and hear something, a very easy way to do so is the podcast form of the show on Spotify. Simply search Blackbeard's Alley, a Pirate Football Podcast. But for my co-host, Jason Tyndall, I'm Bubba Rosenbaum. You've been watching and listening to Blackbeard's Alley, a Pirate Football Podcast. We'll talk to you soon. And as always, go Pirates.
Painted purple